So in this chapter, we're going to go over Maya, what you need to know as a matte painter. We don't need to know every single bells and whistles in the program, but we also need to know Maya versus other softwares because it's the industry standard. All right, so you just have to accept that. I know that a lot of people want to learn Blender and everything like that, but every studio uses Maya, so it's an essential program to know. Now, the reason why a matte painter will want to know 3D is that it will take their paintings to the next level. You may already be an amazing 2D artist, but if you know some 3D, it's just going to elevate it up that much more. So this is going to be essentially just a brute force, what you need to know, no fluff, quickly getting through Maya, and you'll know the essentials. And then if you want to dig deeper into little specific areas and more things, there's tons of other videos online that you can get to. But this is what you need to know to get things started. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and let's get into this. And remember to hit the like button and comment below to help the algorithms out and spread the word of Atmo.
So this is your world. If you press Alt left and the left mouse, you can rotate. So let me just put in an object, cube. Press R, you scale it up. So R is scale, E is rotate, W is move. You press here, it moves just on those axes. So there's Y, Z, and X. You can see down here, tells you which way it is. Oh yeah, and these lock it between the Y and the X if you want to move it there. If you press Alt and left click, you rotate around the objects in the scene. If you press Alt and middle click, you can pan around, and if you press Alt and right click, you can zoom in and out. If you press spacebar, you can get to different views. That's the top view. It says over here on the bottom, top, front, and right, or side view. And this is your perspective. I always work in here, or I'll just like go to another view. Say if I spacebar, right click, and you can have shortcuts here to go to right view. That was weird. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I can tear off a copy if I want to work in that view, and then I can go into this tab over here, this window, and go to panels, perspective, and perspective over here, and work there while this is happening. So you see how they're both selecting, you can see they're moving together. And I can scale it and rotate. So yeah, like if you have another camera, the camera that you created, you can have that torn up here, or have a tear off copy of that, or you have two screens you can put onto your other monitor, have that working on there while you're working perspective over here, moving things around as you see it being moved in the camera view that you want to be rendering through. And if you want to modify, so I want to change just this face, I can right click, hit face, and now I can select faces of the object, and I can move it up and down. I can press R again for scaling. So there's a little bug in Maya, I don't know what it is, but when you press R and you want to do it, this pops up, so you just press R a bunch of times, and then it starts working again. So now you can scale that around, and you can even rotate it around. This is rotating on your Y-axis, this is rotating on your Z, and the red one is rotating on your X. And then if I right click, I have the object selected again, because if you don't, you have other tools that pop up, but if you select the object, right click, have it select vertices, you can move specific points, and go there, specific points. If you press shift left arrow, it's the period button on your keyboard, so if you do that, it can grow. And you can see over here, it's not selected yet. You can deselect, you can shrink the selection by pressing the comma with the shift and comma, so it shrinks it. So yeah, and then you can do shift, right click, insert edges, so edge loop tool, so you get more cuts into the object. And now I can press Q or W to get out of that tool and select faces, move those specifically to where you want, or I can actually shift, right click, extrude a face, and that can come out as a new face, and then I can also scale that, or I can use these, same thickness, offset, there's a bunch of stuff there. So for instance, if I select that face and I do extrude and I do thickness, it does that too, and then I can offset to get a little bevel in there, so thick, offset, bevel kind of thing. I can also do beveling the edges by right click on objects, select edges. So here's one thing though, so now that we have an edge loop, I can double click on an edge and it goes all the way around. So if I want to select this edge loop here, I double click it, right? If I want to select these edges, double click, see how far I can go, or I can shift and select more, or I can select all, Control deselect, Shift drag, add more to it. If I press Shift and right click and do bevel edge, you can get a bevel on the edges, and then you can control that by the fraction. And if you press Control middle click, it does it slower and more precise. And you can also add segments to it to help round out the edge. As you can see here, it starts rounding it out. For the most part, just a simple bevel is good enough for matte painting, or no bevel. Depends on how far away the object is. Sometimes you want to add a bevel to an object so it catches the light better. So if I double click and I do a bevel, sometimes it's not great because the way if I already had a bevel there, let me just edit undo that. Right here I have a bunch of vertices, so if I do there in edges, it can't really bevel that evenly as I would like it to. So let's just try clicking that and then selecting all of them. Oh, also if I select one and then select another edge over there, it will, hold on, let me do that again. Select one, shift select one over here, it will fill in the gaps. It should fill in the gaps, why didn't it? Because there's no edge going all the way across, that's why. If I was to do a multi-cut, G redoes the tool that you had. Enter, there we go. Now I have a new face there that I just made from scratch. There, so let's do that again, shift right click, multi-cut tool, here. I can even go across to here and increase it all the way across. Let's do it again. Again. Here. Whoops, I missed that vert, so I did undo that. Hit the vert, go to the line. It's cool that it highlights. Back in the day, it didn't really highlight the edges, but now it does. So let's see if it actually picks up that edge loop now. No, not really. Not great. Oh, because I missed that one. So let's double click that edge loop. Shift, right click, deletes the edge. Now if you were to just press delete on the keyboard, it would leave a vertex here. See, these edges are broken. So if I go to vertices, there's a leftover vert. You can delete it that way, but the best way to do it is to object mode. So right click on the object and you go to object mode. If you double click on it, you want to always delete edge. And now it deletes the verts as well. So let's do the multi-cut tool again. And let's do edge loop there. There we go, haha. So now they're all connected. You got the other verts. So let's just say like a vert was off. What I could have done, let's just edit undo that. Ooh, that was off too. I could do, let's say I go to verts, I select that and that, and I go shift right click, merge vertices, merge to center, and then they merge. I can also do, that one's not connected to that very well, so I can do a right click, shift right click, target well tool. I could take this vert, select it, hold it down, and you can see that it wants to drag itself to another point. Once I want to point it to, I want to merge it to this vert, so you let go, it goes there. Oh, that was weird, why did that selected? There we go, select that one, move it there, and there you go. And now you can see that stupid bug. W. Now I can move again. Yeah, so now they're not split, separated verts, they're merged together. So now let's try to edge, let's go to object bold, and then edge, and edge loop, and let's do a bevel. And there you go, you have a better, cleaner beveled edge there, and I can make it even bigger. So the thing is that right here, when I'm lighting, you'll get a nice highlight across. So the edge will actually catch some light from your scene versus just a sharp edge here. So sometimes, a lot of times actually you want that because it helps show the form of the edges. But a lot of times I don't do that and I just keep it hard. That's not really that big of a deal, but sometimes you want to catch that little extra light. Because a lot of times, like if you were just to do that, it becomes kind of too CG looking, like it's too perfect. But if you do that, you can always paint it out too. Anyway, so that's an ugly looking object. Create another box, scale it up. You have a custom tab here. If you want to, I want to change the pivot point. I press D. I want to connect it to the verts. I press V, hold V, middle drag, and it connects to that vertice over there. And then I press W or E, and it rotates, and you can move everything from that point now. Now, if I want it back into the center, I have to go to Modify, center pivot. But if you want, since that happens often, you can have your custom tab here, and you can create shortcuts over here. So when you do that, for tools that you use often, if you were to do a Control-Shift select on the object, on the action, it will pop up in here. And then that would have been the abbreviation for it, center pivot, and you'll see right in the center right here. I could even cut into faces, so let's do a face. Extrude face, let's do an offset. Oops, offset. And then press G for, because if I was to drag this out, you'll just have that. So if I press G for the same action, I have a new extrusion that happened, but I can actually push it in and start cutting objects out. Also, if you want to have wireframe mode, you can press 4. Solid mode is 5. Smooth mode is 3, which takes all those edges. If you press 1, it goes back to the normal mode. All these edges get smoothed out. So in order to harden those edges, there's 2 ways. One is to create edge loops, which is right click and you just keep on adding. Let's do it over here, this will be easier. Edge loops here. So as you can see, that got harder, and it even has a wireframe on top of it. So if I was to edge, this is the original box, so if I was to add one over here, it would sharpen that edge. And here, sharpen that edge. Press 1, you can see it again. So that's one way to sharpen edges. So if I sharpen that edge, you'll have, press Q to get out of that view, you'll have a hard edge there. Well, these are all smooth. These are kind of smooth because we have some more edge loops here and they start going around to the other side, but we don't have any edge loops in here and there and there. So if I want this edge to get sharper, I would have to, as you can see it's smooth there, I would have to add an edge loop in here, close to the edge. And it's tighter now. Now if I wanted, I did undo that, if I want it not so sharp, I can add it further away. And I can demonstrate that even by moving the edge. So it gets sharper there, it gets smoother there. Delete that edge. And another way in doing this is just, let's just delete this whole thing. Add another way to get the polygons also. Create polygons cube instead of going to the poly modeling here. Another way is to do a crease edge tool. Edge. Take that, right click, shift right click, and crease edge. And then middle mouse drag across. And you can see this is a little thicker now. And if I press 3, it's kind of sharper there. And if I did on this edge, it does it there too. Both of them have their benefits and usefulness. I don't want to go into explaining those two differences because other people can probably explain it a lot better than me. I see it more as a great way to block out modeling. It's easier to UV stuff if you have to UV, but if you're like a real specialist modeler, they probably use edge loops more. But I don't want to speak for them. It's pretty useful to use the crease edge tool. Now the crease edge tool also doesn't give you the sharpest of edges, I feel, compared to if I was to do edge loops close and everywhere, because the real usefulness of it is that it becomes a lot easier to model and UV because you don't have as many edges to deal with. So another thing is on the right side over here you have your channel box and you have your attributes and modeling toolkit. So when I click on an object here and I go to its attributes editor, it's all the preferences and options that are inside that model. So you can see that the crease tool actually popped up in here. And if I went to edit, delete by type history, it would disappear. So it's just all the edits that happen inside here show up here, and even the shader shows up in here as well. So this is a Lambert shader, so if I was to right click, assign new material, go to my redshift, create redshift material, it will pop up in here too. And the Lambert would disappear. So the cube, you can even do displays, all the attributes for anything in this, like even cameras are on the right side over here. And then the channel box is a more condensed version of it. It's easier to get to the translation, rotation, scale attributes. You can still do that here, but it's laid out differently in the shape. You can hide render stats. You can have the object not be visible in the render, so you can get rid of primary visibility, but then also cast its shadows, so you can mess with that over here. Redshift options are also found in the attributes as well. You can find all those details in any kind of lighting DVD and modeling specific DVDs. All those attributes and details that I could be going over would be a whole new DVD on its own. So I'm just roughly going through Maya for beginners, and the tools up here is the toolbar, Redshift For lighting, same with Arnold, comes with Maya now. Arnold is another rendering software. Redshift lights, so I go to Redshift, and you can always tear off a tool by clicking that, and you can create lights. Redshift physical lights here, and your sky domes and all that. And then your render settings are over here. Click on this button, and this can, right now it's on Arnold rendered. The render using that it says Arnold, so I want to switch over to Redshift. Then you have all your settings over here for Redshift.
All right, I'm going to jump into here, put a pause on my old self recording this because I was using Redshift back then. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown on how to use Arnold since that comes with Maya. And this is actually my primary renderer as of right now. So yeah, let's check out Arnold. You got the Arnold render settings. The samples are really simple in Arnold. This is where you check them out over here. You can do it through specular. Overall, the camera AA overall it's like a brute force sampling. And when I'm talking about sampling, I'm talking about these little dots in here that can be smoothed out. So if I put IPR on, you got all noisy there, and I crank it up to say 8. It slows it down, but it starts smoothing, or it starts removing some of those samples. Now, most of those samples now are most likely coming from the physical sky dome that I have in here. One way you can check those things, and it's also very useful, are your AOVs. So AOVs, you can split them out as into your spec and reflections and albedos and all that stuff. So typically you can grab your albedo. Let's put that on pause. Let's do direct, indirect, specular. And there's so many different other kinds in here that you can play with. You can get your Z depth from here and position from here. You can export out normals. I'll just put that in there just to show you. And now to view these, I can press play and it will show up over here, and you'll see the normals are there. Albedo is just the texture. So if I was to put bricks, you'd see the bricks in there. Direct, indirect, and specular. So the indirect is the GI. So if you look at the direct light, so we're at the beauty right now, right? And then if we go to the direct light, you can see there's some noise in there. So we'll check out the light source, and we will go and crank out the samples from 1 to, let's say, 2. Let's save this real quick. So now we have a still here for this image. And if we update this to, let's say, 4, and now it's a lot cleaner, and you can see the before and after. So if I do the whole thing, uncheck that, I'll do the whole thing. And now it's a lot cleaner. You can even go back down to 4. So you take a still of this for the overall, and do a render. It'll be a much faster render, and we can compare it, and you don't see much of a difference. A tiny bit cleaner with it higher samples. And you can check out the specular. Those are the speculars, and the indirect, the direct. Now let's add a texture real quick. Whoops. Let's go to click on the cube and do the standard surface shader, which is the standard material for Arnold. So if I was to go into the hyper shader and just type in anything like AI standard, you can pop it up there, or you could do right click on it, assign new material, go to Arnold, and you'll see all the different shaders in here. I'm not going to go into heavy detail on this. You can get that in a video online somewhere. So we'll go to color, file, grab my brick texture, double click on that to refresh it, and then we'll do another render. And now we have that in there. And then if you go to the beauty, it's there in the beauty, and we go to the albedo, and now you actually have the texture in there. One thing that's important with Arnold is that a lot of times you have to, when you like say update Geo or some other big thing, you'll have to do an update full scene. It's buggy like that. You have to do that quite often. And then you press play again, so you get into IPR. Now we can press 3 and we can get the smooth version all in real time. So yeah, recap. So you got the image format EXR, and you got under the common, and you got the resolution down here, and then you have the renderable cameras. You can do more than one camera. Let's say side, perspective, and then add renderable camera, and you can use a side, whatever. You can do a custom camera, name it whatever you want. So if I was to go to panel, new, rename this over here in the outliner, test, you'll see it shows up as test. Now you do have that physical light, but when you want to check out the other lights, you go into the lights in the Arnold tab, and then you have your area lights, sky dome, mesh, photometric lights, which are your IES lights that you would plug in into a file format, .ies file format, which is more like architectural lights that you can find online. So they're .ies files. Area lights, which give you independent lights, and you can change the colors to whatever you want, and increase exposure to, let's say, 5. And now you see some light coming there. Let's just hide the intensity of the sky dome to black, and now you can see the red light hitting it, and we can increase the exposure of that too. More, say 10. There you go. Lower it a little bit. And then you have your sky dome, which is not the physical sky, but sky dome, where you can actually plug in your own HDR. So right now the color is white. You can make it whatever color you want, and you can add any HDRI texture into it to give you a light with the sky and the sun. So for example, on that, we'll go into the color file. I threw in a snow HDRI in here, and now we've got this. Let's hide this. Press H to hide it. Let's do the sky dome. The sky dome, and increase the exposure to 2. And now it's really bright. Go to 1, and you can rotate the sky and get the shadows you want, and you can see. So when I moved around like this, it didn't change this because we're in perspective mode. We're in a different camera, so we have to switch to the cameras to see that one. And now you can see the sun is coming from there, and it's lighting the sphere. What's nice about the HDRIs is that you get the correct color in the shadows too. So everything interacts correctly. Also, with the ASUS workflow in Arnold for HDRIs, you'll notice that it looks more saturated, right? That doesn't look as natural. So what you could do is just go into the file texture itself. So you click on the dome, go to color, and then down here, color space, you switch it from scene linear to scene linear sRGB. And then you'll notice this becomes more natural looking. See that in the background, even on the picture itself. If I just go back to raw, you got a lot more saturated looking. So it's up to you what you want to use. It's just seeing linear as to what it was originally intended to look like in the background and lighting. Now, another thing I use all the time is changing the resolution that I'm using to speed up my render. So if I was doing like a 4K render, I can go to tests, and you can do like 10% of the render or 50% size. So currently it's 1280 by 720. If you do 50% of that, you'll see it change down here. And now it says 640 by 360. And if you wanted to go back to the regular, just go to 100, and it updates automatically. And if you wanted to increase the specular samples, you could just pump that up by 3. Now, Arnold has a GPU version of it, but I never really use it because I find it buggy. Sometimes I'll use it for very early stuff, but it tends to act wonky sometimes. But maybe they've updated it. Now, if I wanted the background to be black, I can go to my sky dome, and down here for visibility, you can just bring the camera down to 0, and now you'll have the alpha of your ground plane and sphere. If I put it back up, you do not have your alpha.
But yeah, it's cool, it's fast, and you don't have to pink that. That's the beauty of 3D, and you get all the perspectives that you need, shadows, accurate shadows. It is a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's a quick run through of Maya in rendering. If you want to UV some stuff, you can check things out with UV Editor, how to unwrap stuff with automatic and planar and spherical. You can find that easily on YouTube somewhere, how to unwrap your UVs if you want to do that. A lot of features for editing geo, so you can take these two objects. Right now they're separate, right? You can take them and then you can do a mesh, combine, so now they're just one object, not a group, but one solid geo. If I want them to separate again, I can go to mesh, separate, and they are separate again. And then if I want to do, let's say I want this face to be cut out of that, I would go to mesh, where is it, edit mesh, detach. Is it? No, I think it is. Oh, it is, yes. You can detach that and delete it. You can delete faces as you want by just pressing delete. Another thing to be aware of, when you're rendering from just one view, you don't need geo in the back at all. So let's say the camera's over here and you have geo back here, your renders can get slower and your whole scene gets slower just dragging around if you have a huge environment. So you can just delete stuff that's not being shown in camera. You can also snap. So if I press X, it will snap to the grid that I have here. And then I can also press V, select that and drag it with left mouse to the verts. And then I can click this button over here to show wireframe on shaded. So you see the edges. Let's hide the grid right now. You can see the edges. So let's press 5, see it better again. I can snap to a curve, slide across the curve. This middle mouse drag here to the curve. You can see if I press 4, I'm snapping to the curve here. I can't get off it. The verts, snap middle mouse, snap there. So one thing that which is annoying about Maya, or maybe it's most 3D softwares, let's put that grid back on. So you have a grid here, and the plane comes in perfectly, but if I was to delete this, and I have create, let's just do square, it comes in the middle right here, and that's not how you want to start building, right? So you can either press D, or you can do, you can just eyeball it and move it like that, or you can press D, and then click on the face here, press D again to get out of that, and then press X to snap to the grid, and now you actually have it correctly on the ground. And then you can start modeling, and you can duplicate, Control D, get more. Yeah, quick overview just to start playing with 3D and understanding Maya. So that's that.